73% more tomatoes off the same square meter of soil. That is what University of South Australia researchers recorded when they put wicking beds against ordinary surface watering. The number is real and peer-reviewed. I'll show you where it came from. But the same research quietly demolishes the other claim you have heard about wicking beds, the one about saving half your water. That one does not survive contact with the data. So let's go through what the Adelaide team measured, what it really costs you, and whether converting one of your beds is worth doing. The study is Semananda, Ward, and Myers, published in the journal Horticulturae in 2016, out of the Mawson Lakes campus in Adelaide. The setup explains how you should read the result. They did not use raised garden beds. They used plastic containers 56 centimeters across, 1 tomato plant in each, 8 treatments, 3 replicates, inside a glass house across a single spring and summer. 1 season, 1 site. The authors list all of that in their own limitations. Now the opponent, and this changes every number that follows. Those surface-watered pots weren't managed by somebody with a hose and a guess. A calibrated moisture probe went into every pot daily, and water went on only when soil moisture dropped to 75% of field capacity. That is best practice precision irrigation. So wicking beat a very good opponent. But this was never wicking bed versus a normal gardener with a watering can. And buried in the methods section is something nobody selling wicking beds mentions. Every wicking pot was hand-watered from the surface for the first 14 days after transplanting, 21 days in the deeper beds. The reservoir doesn't reach seedlings until their roots grow down to it. So plant straight into a full reservoir and you will lose them. Water from the top for the first 2 weeks. Now, the tomatoes. In the shallow pots, 300 millimeters of soil, 12 inches deep, the surface-watered plant produced 1.78 kilograms of marketable fruit. The 3 wicking versions produced 2.85, 2.89, and 3.08 kilograms per plant. That is a yield increase of 59.6%, 62.5%, and 72.8%. You will see that range quoted online as 62 to 73. That version comes from the paper's written discussion. The data table it points to actually starts at 59.6. Small gap. But if somebody in the comments has the paper open, that is where it comes from. Before you get excited, the fruit quality numbers explain most of that gain, and they arrive with a warning from the authors themselves. Every treatment threw fruit away. In the shallow surface-watered pots, 16.8% of the total harvest ended up in the cull pile. In the best wicking treatment, 0.6%. Be careful how you read that. 16.8% is a share of the harvest that got discarded. It is not an increase in anything. The distance between the two figures is 16.2 percentage points. The culprit was blossom end rot, that sunken dark patch on the base of a ripening tomato. It is a calcium delivery failure driven by soil moisture swinging up and down, not by any shortage of calcium in the soil. But the authors attach a caution that almost never gets quoted. Blossom end rot can also come from soil chemistry or from the volume of water applied, not just the method. They write that inferences from the shallow bed results should be moderated accordingly. Those shallow beds are exactly the ones producing the 59 to 73% figures. So the headline carries a hedge from the people who generated it. I would still take the wicking bed, but you deserve to know the ground it stands on. Now the claim I have to correct, and it is on nearly every product page for these things. Wicking beds get sold on water savings, half the water. Some sites say 90%. The paper's introduction calls that out directly, noting there was no published research behind any of it. So they measured it. In the shallow beds, the wicking treatments used about 122 and 125 liters per plant across the season. The surface-watered pot used nearly 135, under 10% less. Nowhere near half. And the wicking treatment that produced the biggest harvest in the whole trial used 6% more water than the surface pot did. The deeper beds did save properly, 22%, but they surrendered 11% of their yield to do it. So if you were building a wicking bed to cut your water bill, the research does not have your back. Two things did improve, and both matter more than litres. The first is water use efficiency, grams of fruit for every liter you put in. The shallow wicking beds hit 24 grams per liter. The surface pot managed 13. Roughly 85% more food out of the same water. The second is your time. Those surface-watered pots needed 40 to 50 separate watering events across the season, once every 2 or 3 days all summer. The wicking pots needed fewer than 26, and during the development stage, some went 4 full weeks without a single refill. That is the real saving, not liters on the meter, trips out to the tap. Two things drive that difference, and both were measured directly. The first is moisture stability. In the surface pots, moisture in the top 10 centimeters spiked and crashed with every watering. In the wicking pots, it sat almost flat for weeks. The second is soil temperature, and this one decides whether you should build one at all. Loggers at 5 and 15 centimeters showed the wicking beds running consistently cooler at their peak on hot afternoons. The reason is thermal mass. There is a body of water under that soil, and water is slow to heat. Hold on to the temperature result. Now the side of this that never makes the promotional photos. Cost. A standard bed is a timber frame and soil. A wicking bed adds a waterproof liner, an overflow outlet, a fill pipe, reservoir gravel, and separation fabric. Even at the $50 build we did, it costs more, and across 4 or 6 beds that stops being pocket change. Build time. 3 to 5 hours per bed, and most of it goes into a single measurement. The overflow outlet has to sit at exactly the right height in the wall. Too high and the water table drowns the root zone. Too low and you have paid for reservoir you will never use. Soil catches people out. A wicking bed only works if water genuinely climbs. The trial soil was 90% sand. Heavy clay and rich compost blends wick unevenly, so you are often buying a purpose-made mix. Which brings us to depth, and this is where wicking beds genuinely lose. 300 millimeters of soil beat 600 in every comparison. At 600, the wicking bed produced 11% less than its surface-watered twin. Capillary rise has a ceiling. Build too deep, and the top of your bed is simply dry. There is money in that same finding. A 150 millimeter gravel reservoir performed just as well as a 300 millimeter one. Same result, half the gravel. So build it shallow, both layers. And your liner is the entire system. Pond liner rated for ultraviolet outlasts builder's plastic by years, and the part that fails first is always the part the sun can reach. Cap that top edge with timber. Then there is salt, the maintenance job almost nobody mentions. The same team measured it properly in 2021. In a standard bed, you water from the top and dissolved salts flush downward, away from the roots. In a wicking bed, the water climbs, carries salt with it, evaporates off the surface, and the salt stays behind. In the top 75 millimeters of soil, surface-watered pots on fresh tap water read 0.64 decisiemens per meter. Wicking beds on that same tap water read 2.2. On recycled water, 2.6. Tomatoes begin losing yield above roughly 2.5. The freshwater beds stayed under the line. The recycled water beds crossed it. The fixes are simple. Flush from the surface every few weeks in the growing season, mulch it, or scrape off the top few centimeters at season's end. And salt on your surface is salt you can physically remove, which beats it leaching into groundwater with your fertilizer. So it is a job, not a flaw, but a job you have to remember every year, indefinitely. If this is the level of detail you came for, subscribe. Raised bed builds and soil science go up here every week. So, 4 questions in the order that actually matters. First, your climate. This is the one I told you to hold on to. The whole advantage is buffering, And buffering only pays you back when there is something to buffer against. Hot, dry, windy summers, long stretches with no rain, beds sitting in full afternoon sun. That is where the temperature finding turns into money. Cool, damp, maritime summers are the opposite case. The reservoir stays full, the soil stays wet, and you have paid to solve a problem you do not have. If your summers are mild and wet, you can honestly stop the video here and go build a normal bed. Second, what you grow. Thirsty, long season, moisture-sensitive crops are where the gain shows up. Tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, cucumbers, squash, and beans. And shallow-rooted crops are not the problem people claim. The same team tested cause lettuce and radish later, and the wicking beds won there too. The real limit sits at the other end. Your soil is capped around 30 centimeters, so long carrots, parsnips, and main crop potatoes want a standard deep bed. And anything that resents permanently damp roots, rosemary, lavender, most Mediterranean herbs, does not belong in one at all. Third, time away from home. If you travel through summer, or you have come home to a dead bed because nobody was around to water it, the value was never really about yield. It is about the bed being alive when you get back. 4 weeks without a refill is a different relationship with your garden. Fourth, budget. Convert one bed, not 4. Run it a full season beside your standard beds, same crop, same variety, planted the same week. You will learn more from that than from any published study, because it will be your climate and your soil. Now the money, with my assumptions on the table so you can swap in your own. Say the conversion costs $80 more than a standard bed the same size. Liner, gravel, overflow fitting, fill pipe, and a bag of mix that actually wicks. Water first, and I will be blunt. 7 to 10% off one bed's irrigation volume is a rounding error on a domestic water bill. $2 to $5 a year. The water bill is not where this pays for itself. The harvest is. 4 tomato plants in a bed roughly 4 feet square. Marketable yield per plant went from 1.78 kilograms up to around 2.9. So across 4 plants, that is an extra 4.5 kilograms. 10 pounds of tomatoes, or $20 to $45 of fruit. So the running total. Year 1, $80 down and 30 back, 50 behind. Year 2, 20 behind. Year 3, you cross into positive. But look at what that assumes. A hot, dry summer where the buffering matters. Yields from pots in an Adelaide glasshouse holding up in your backyard. And tomatoes you would have actually bought. In a mild, wet season, it may never pay back in cash. What it will do every year, whatever the weather, is need refilling far less often than the bed next to it. So, back to those 2 garden beds sitting side by side in the sun. The title, Claim Holds Up, with conditions. Up to 73% more marketable tomatoes, in a glasshouse, in shallow pots, against precision irrigation in Adelaide over 1 season, with a hedge from the authors about blossom end rot. Your backyard is not that glasshouse, but the mechanism underneath it, steady soil moisture and a cooler root zone in high summer, travels perfectly well. So tell me, would you convert one bed, just one, as a trial? Drop a comment with which bed you would pick and what you would plant in it, because I read them and I am curious how this splits by climate. Next up, we start the fall preparation series. Cover crops, garlic timing, and putting a raised bed to sleep in autumn so it wakes up better in spring. See you in that one.